Good morning. Please, everybody, sit.
Yeah.
Thank you. We would have been here a little bit early, but they put you a long way from Philadelphia, huh? Is that because you voted for Bernie Sanders? I don't know. Let me introduce Jane. Jane, come on up, everybody. Let me thank all of the folks from all of the states, from Hawaii and Idaho and North Dakota and South Dakota and Utah and West Virginia. We had the opportunity to visit almost all of those states. Jane went to Hawaii, and we did very, very well in all of your states in our country. I'm here just to make a few points this morning. The first point is that if I have anything to say about it, and I will, the political revolution continues. All of you know, and I know this, all of you know the course of history, and the real change, profound change, never takes place overnight. All right, if you think about the struggle of trade unionists to form unions to give workers dignity on the job, it did not happen overnight.
Go union!
That's right. You talk about the struggle of civil rights and the number of people who died in that struggle, who were beaten in that struggle, who were jailed in that struggle. That struggle continues, but it did not happen overnight. The women's struggle did not happen overnight. Gay rights struggle did not happen overnight. So social change, real change, does not happen, in one day or in 1 year. It happens only from the bottom on up. And what has made our campaign different than other campaigns historically is you have never heard me say this campaign is about electing Bernie Sanders. Of course, that is terribly important. Who becomes president is terribly important. But our type of campaign, our understanding is that politics is more than just electing an individual. It is creating a movement and transforming society, and nobody can do that for the people other than the people themselves. Because the actual act of being involved is what the revolution is about. If anyone sits around and thinks somebody is going to do it for you, then you don't understand what this whole thing has been about. We have got to do it for ourselves. And the other thing that we understand is when people begin to wake up, when they begin to demand justice and what their rights are, then we win hands down. Because no matter how much money and how much power the billionaire class has, when people stand up and they fight for justice, they will not be denied. So what this campaign has always been about, making it different than other campaigns, is taking a hard and honest look, sometimes a painful look, at where we are as a country. Now, have we made real progress in the last 7.5 years since Bush left office, when we were losing 800,000 jobs a month? because of the greed and the recklessness and illegal behavior on Wall Street, anybody who is not absolutely partisan or hateful has to acknowledge that, of course, we have made real change. Unemployment is and we have got to make that point during this campaign. But there is another reality that we have got to have the courage to acknowledge as well. Is yes, we are better off than we were 7 years ago, but anybody in this room who thinks that millions of our fellow Americans are not hurting and hurting badly today, it would be sorely mistaken. Because here is the other reality. Here is the other reality that we have got to have the courage to acknowledge, because I've always believed that you can't go forward unless you have the courage to deal with the truth, even if it is painful. So here is the truth. For 40 years, 40 years, under Democratic leadership, under Republican leadership, the great middle class of this country, which was once the envy of the world, has been disappearing. I want you all to think about it, because the American people are thinking about it. And technology in the last many years has exploded. We all know that. Worker productivity has gone up. Why is it that millions of people are working longer hours for lower wages? Why is it that male workers are making hundreds of dollars in real inflation accounted for dollars, hundreds of dollars less than they made 40 years ago? Women workers making substantially less than they made in 2007. That is a reality that we cannot ignore, because the American people are not ignoring it. They're working long hours, they're working 2 jobs, they're working 3 jobs, and you know what else? They're scared to death about the future for their kids. Because if we do not get our act together, it could well be that the younger generation, for the first time in the modern history of America, will have a lower standard of living than their parents. Why? Why? Did some terrible natural catastrophe hit our country? No. We have to ask that question, why? And then the answer takes you to an area where many people in this country, including some Democrats, do not want to go. They do not want to look at it. And then you got to look at corporate greed and the role of Wall Street. And the fact that right now, it's not just that the top 1% owns as much wealth as the bottom 90%, it is that 85% of all new income being generated today is going to the top 1%. Now that is an unpleasant truth for people who want to raise money for campaigns from that 1%. But we understand that is a reality that has to be dealt with. Corporate greed, the power of Wall Street cannot be dismissed. It has to be addressed. It has to be overcome if we're going to break the economy. So what do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish? Well, for a start, we want an equitable distribution of wealth. We want, when people are working hard, they deserve a fair shake. That's all. Not everybody's going to make the same income. But I do not want to see people in this country who I talk to in this campaign who are working 50, 60 hours a week and can't take care of their families because they're making 10, 12 bucks an hour. You can't do that. And that is why we're going to raise the minimum wage to $15. And we're going to end the humiliation of women sitting in the same office as men making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. And here is another issue we have got to be honest enough to acknowledge. Unemployment today is much, much lower than when Bush left office. That is absolutely true. That's true. But here is another truth, is that real unemployment is not 5%. That's official unemployment. That does not include people who've given up looking for work, or people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. And that does not include communities that I visit, often minority communities, African-American communities, Latino communities, where you're seeing unemployment rates of young people, the future of this country, 20, 30, 40%. And then we ask, how do we end up with more people in jail than any other country on earth? And that is why we understand that we have to invest in our young people in jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. Think about it. And again, that is what this campaign is about, is raising issues, demanding discussion on issues. Why in America do we have more people in jail than any other country? Why are we spending $80 billion a year locking up 2.2 million people? And we need answers for that. The answers are that I want jobs for those kids. I don't want them hanging out on street corners getting into trouble. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. And the gentleman here raises another issue when we talk about why we are where we are economically. That is our trade policies. For many, many decades now, whether it's NAFTA or CAFTA or permanent normal trade relations with China, what we have seen is corporate America getting rich CEOs making tens of millions of dollars a year, throwing workers in this country out on the street so that they can move to low-wage countries. I was in Indiana a few months ago, and you got a place there that's owned by United Technologies, one of the big major corporations. A few years ago, not so many years ago, they had enough money to pay their CEO, who left his position, over $70 million is a severance package. But they can't maintain a couple of factories in Indiana. They're moving to Mexico, where they're going to pay people $3 an hour. All right, that's what has gone on and on and on, and that is why we must defeat the TPP. TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, is not only bad because it's a continuation of other bad trade policies, but it also does something else that a lot of Americans don't know. And that is, you have this investor-state dispute resolution business in there. You know what that is? Give you an example of what it is about. I'll give you two examples to tell you to what degree these trade agreements are nothing more than moving toward the complete control of the whole world economy by a handful of corporations. I'll give you an example. Tiny little country of Uruguay. Tiny little country. They had a president there who was an oncologist, worried about cancer. And this guy put together a very strong program to prevent children and the people of the country from smoking, an anti-smoking campaign, which had success. On the cigarette packages, they had, big stuff which said, cigarettes kill you, etc., etc. And the goal was to keep children from smoking. You know what happened? Philip Morris sued Uruguay and goes to an international tribunal as part of the trade agreement, 3-person tribunal. And Philip Morris argues that because of this trade agreement, their profits, i.e. their ability to kill children through tobacco, has been impacted. Their profit. That's right. Well, I care that they're trying to kill children with cigarettes. That's the issue. They then go to the tribunal and say, my profits have been hurt because now we can't sell cigarettes to children. And they have a leg to stand on legally because the bottom line is their profits, not the health of the children. That is how crazy this stuff. Give you another example. We put a lot of pressure on President Obama to kill the Keystone Pipeline. And President Obama did the right thing. He ended up killing the Keystone Pipeline. I don't know if you know, that's the good news. TransCanada, the owner of the Keystone Pipeline, I don't know how many of you knew this, is now suing under NAFTA for $15 billion in damage because Obama stopped that project. In other words, what you're seeing is corporations able to go to an international tribunal to override what governments are trying to do to protect the health and the environment of the people. That is why we have got to defeat the TPP. Let me just say, I've gone on longer than I intended. I've got to go to a few more breakfasts. But let me just say this. In the next few months, we have a very, very important task. And that task is to make sure that this country does not elect the worst presidential candidate in the modern history of this country. My feelings about Trump are not just, that he wants to give tax breaks to billionaires, or that he thinks that climate change is a hoax, etc., etc. My fear about Donald Trump is that he is a demagogue who does not believe in the Constitution of the United States, who is making the cornerstone of his campaign not economics, not health, but bigotry and hatred. That's right. To try to divide us up after all of our struggles as a nation for so many years, to try to divide us up as to whether or not we are Latino or Mexican, whether we're Muslim, whether we're women, whether we're African American. Do not forget that before Trump became a candidate for president, he was one of the leaders in the so-called birther movement. You all remember that? And what that birther movement was about was trying to undermine the legitimacy of the first African American president in the history of our country. So we have got to do everything that we can to defeat Trump, to elect Secretary Clinton to be our next president. But I hope everybody understands that the day after the election is as important as the day before the election. And that means that we keep our eyes on the prize, and the prize is transforming America, guaranteeing health care to all people as a right to a single-payer health care. Paid family and medical leave. Creating millions of jobs, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, and so forth. All right? You all know the agenda. But our job is to elect Hillary Clinton, and the day after to continue the fight for that agenda. Now, I want you all to know, some of you do, some of you may not, that we, as a result of your efforts, we help work with the Clinton people to create the strongest platform in the history of the Democratic Party. Our job now is to get that platform implemented by electing a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House, and a Democratic House. And the other thing that we've got to do, and we are going to do it, because we are now transitioning our campaign to another type of organization. And what that other type of organization is going to be doing is revitalizing, working with all of you, revitalizing American democracy, and getting people, especially young people, to start running for office, school board, city council, state legislature. So let me conclude by thanking all of you. We have begun the process of transforming this country and of revitalizing American democracy. When what we have accomplished is to bring so many young people into politics, it's something we should be very, very proud of. So thank you all very, very much.